Hello. I'm super excited to be with the serverless community back again. And it's my pleasure to be talking about a new hackathon that we have been running, and we are like in the last 3 days of it. So this is like the Spring Serverless Hackathon by Serverless Guru. Like when I was asked to be a judge for this Serverless Guru hackathon, I was like, that would be my biggest pleasure, like, because I love serverless, I love building event-driven applications, and I love like how serverless Guru is pushing this frontier with great tools like Momento. Let me just give you a couple of updates about like the serverless Guru hackathon, that you are still not late. So like what we are expecting from our attendees, our competitive people who are joining to the hackathon is you are expected to build a full stack event driven application using Momento Cache or a topic, Momento topics. So it can be both of it. So, but it should be at least one of it. So that you will use it for the in the backend front end connectivity, or just exchange data, or just like, I don't know, to orchestrate something. So Momento Cache and topics are very handy, and yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. So we have been running through some webinars since we kicked off the hackathon on April 25th. Now, today, like, we are going to see Ellen Halton from Momento running through a demo about like how would you actually implement event-driven applications using Momento topics and cache. Before we move to Ellen's session, like, let me talk about the important dates. So there is only that weekend left for you to complete your submission. Like, this is the end of May, end of Sunday will be our deadline, and we will judge. We'll come together and announce the winner on June 2nd, and then we will be running a closing webinar and showcasing what were the projects, and like what made the winner a winner. And I'm super excited to check what you have been doing there. So moving forward. So what we are expecting from you for the project submission is that, like, write something about it. Like, yes, we will look at your code, we will check how it works, and we will play with it maybe, but we will need to see how you would like to talk about it. And like, don't be afraid of writing long. There's no such thing a long article in the in the age of AI. So keep it original, keep it yourself, and then please write an article about it. And then we would really appreciate something working with your own words, and make a demo of your project, and then just tell us like how it is working, and how it is helping, and like what is the idea behind. Yeah. And you will need to you will need to put your code in a public repository, so that like not only judges but everyone else will be able to check it moving forward. And I think it will be something that you will be proud of. So we are all in Discord. We live in serverless server. So join us there. You can just use this QR code for joining us. There's a special channel. There's a special channel about the hackathon. You will be able to find us there, and looking forward to socializing with everyone online there. So now it's time to learn from an expert. So Ellen is someone that I'm respecting deeply in the community, and I'm really happy to be able to speak with him on this webinar. So I'm giving it to Ellen, and so let's see how we are using Momento caches and topics in order to build an event-driven application. Is Ellen here?
There we go. What an intro. Thank you, Emrah. It's good to see you, man.
It's good to see you. Likewise, man. Yeah.
I feel like I only see you once a year, and that's in Vegas at reInvent.
Yeah, like, we are in a very different geography. So it is 10 p.m. here, and it is 8 p.m. here, and it's 10 a.m. there. So we are in different parts of the world, but it's great that like the serverless event-driven architectures are connecting ourselves for years now. So I'm very glad to speaking with you today. Other than listening you speaking on event-driven applications, but it would be also fun. So like I don't want to just dominate this thing, and like want to leave it to you. Thank you so much for running this. Wednesday, I will see you at the end of it.
Okay, yeah, thank you, and thank you everybody for joining. I'm excited to talk about this because this covers two of the things that I like to talk about the most, which is Momento, of course, work for Momento, and also event-driven architectures. So I get to do best of both worlds, in my opinion, because Momento actually has really cool ways to plug into event-driven architectures, especially inside of AWS native applications. And that's what we're going to go and take a look at today. I already got a very kind, a nice intro, so I will not camp on myself for too long. Great timing on that music. That was very good. Let's see. Behind the scenes, Paul, can you do like a nice lo-fi for me? Maybe this might be too chill for my vibe. Yeah, that's it. That's the one. I'll say hi to Jonathan. Thanks for calling it out. Okay, so my name's Alan Helton. I am an AWS serverless hero. I'm also a Postman leader, which is Postman's version of an AWS hero. I am a farmer. If I look dirty, it's because I was actually installing irrigation on my farm just this morning. And we cut the water line, and I wasn't able to wash off all of the dirt prior to coming in and doing this presentation. So I fit the bill, I feel like, today. Do a lot of fun stuff with event-driven architectures and AI and serverless. So today, let's talk a little bit about what you can build when you push those limits with Momento and you think a little bit outside of the box. So let's start with a demo, and we'll work backwards from the demo. Now, because I'm not a fan of the demo gremlins coming and messing up whatever my code is, I actually recorded the screen, and we're going to look at it for a second here. And this is actually the entirety of the demo. It's a little squirrel running around on the screen, and all you have to do is click on it. So that's it. That's the demo. Now, this is a game that I made that actually is served out of Lambda. We'll look at that. But what I want you to notice is as I click on the squirrel over on the right-hand side, I know it's kind of hard to see, but that level next to Modern Sea Lion, that's my username, is going up. So it goes from level 1 to level 2, but it's not necessarily correlating with the clicks on that squirrel. And that's because there's a lot of logic that's happening behind the scenes in an asynchronous workflow, because event-driven architectures generally aren't synchronous. Synchronous meaning, let me wait for a response before I continue. That'd be a terrible way to play a game, by the way, if you had to click on something and nothing moved until the server was done thinking. So really what we're doing is we're clicking on a mouse, we're clicking on a squirrel, letting this big asynchronous process run in the background and letting the player continue to play. So when we look at it, it's super simple. And when we look at the architecture or what's actually going on, it's still super simple. Really, the gist of it is you have your HTML page. When you click on a squirrel, it's hitting API Gateway inside of AWS. API Gateway is connecting directly to step functions and launching an asynchronous execution. And inside of that workflow that is running in step functions, it's calling Momento topics to publish data or send messages back down to the browser. So it's just this high-level circle that's happening over and over and over again. So web page, API gateway, step functions, topics, back down to HTML. So from a very high level, super basic. But let's talk about the user experience. I'm all about developer experience, user experience. We kind of need to take a little bit closer of a look at what this is to figure out, well, why is this cool? So let's look at that. So a little bit more detail on the screen here. When you, the player, if we start over here on this guy, when you click on that squirrel. It's hitting API gateway. Sorry for the interruption. My cat is apparently on my shelf right above my head and just try to knock something down on my head. First, here's an important thing. The game that we're playing, the actual HTML that's rendering the squirrel jumping around on the screen, that's being served out of Lambda. So we're hitting an API gateway, and we're hitting a Lambda function. That Lambda function takes the IP address of the caller. It looks up that person's IP address in DynamoDB. It says, oh, okay, this IP address, that's modern sea lion. Let me load their information. And then it goes and it actually builds the HTML. It is generating a Momento session token to pass down to a browser, so the browser can actually communicate with Momento services. And then it serves that back down to the browser, and the browser renders that game that we just saw. Pretty cool. Then when you click on a squirrel, we're hitting that API gateway endpoint again, and it's hitting step functions. We'll look at the step functions thing in a minute. But again, API gateway connecting directly to step functions. No Lambda function in the middle that's doing the execution. And then that step function workflow, a whole bunch of stuff in there. But the two main pieces that we need to take away is that it is directly connecting to Momento topics and to Momento cache. And that's to actually send messages back down to say the location change, so move the squirrel on the screen. And then the HTML page will actually load that data out of the cache itself to figure out where is the next thing. So the message that goes down says, hey, the squirrel moved. And then it uses the cache to say, well, where did it move to? So again, high level, we're indefinitely running that API gateway to HTML over and over and over again as that user gains levels. So let's look a little bit more, dive in with more detail. Oh yeah, we already talked about that. Okay, so step functions. This is really the meat of it. And I know it's kind of smaller. There's a lot going on. So I'll explain what's happening. So we'll go step by step. What's really cool, and the reason that I initially made this demo is when step functions launched about a year ago, HTTP integrations, it meant that you could connect to third-party APIs without using Lambda. I can't tell you how many times I've written a Lambda function that all it does is call a third-party API over fetch, just using Node to say, fetch, go hit this web API and return the result. Don't even do a transform, just call it. You don't have to do that anymore with step functions. So step functions actually allows you to call the Momento HTTP API. And it says, hey, load this for me. Incoming came an ID for the squirrel that I clicked on. And can you get that for me? And what it's doing here is essentially an item potency check. It's saying, is this squirrel with this ID the latest, basically? To keep you from clicking on a squirrel and spamming it, power leveling quickly. So it goes down here, it says, basically this is your if check. Is this the most recent one? And if it's not the most recent one, so let's say I double clicked and was able to get that API endpoint running twice on the same squirrel, it'll fail. It'll say, no, we're not gonna level you up. But if it is the very first time, and if it is the active squirrel, we're gonna say, yeah, let's do this. So it branches off and does two different things at the same time. It will, let me see if I can zoom in. I don't think I can with Google Slides. Okay, so first thing it'll do is it will actually go and it will change the location of the squirrel inside of the cache. So it says, okay, well, let's come up with a new location. It'll use math.random to come up with a new XY coordinate. And then it calls out to Momento again. It says, hey, save this as a new location of the squirrel. And then it publishes an event to EventBridge to say, hey, the location changed. On the other side, the other thing that it does at the same time is it loads the player data out of the cache. So I don't necessarily want to go to DynamoDB to load information about that player every time, because that's unnecessary, because if I have an active player that's playing the game, really we're in an active session. I don't need to go to the database every time. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a cache item for that person, because we're going to load and manipulate their data a lot, especially if they're clicking on tens of to 100 different squirrels. We don't need to call DynamoDB that many times. So we're just going to go fetch it out of the cache. This is the very first time this person is playing today. They're not going to be in the cache. So they say, okay, well, if that person's not in there, let's load them from DynamoDB. And that's what it does. It loads them out, and then it will create the user if this is the very first time ever playing. It'll add them into DynamoDB. But if it's not, if they're a returning user to play, we'll say, okay, cool. Let's get your data shaped up properly and go and give you some extra credit. Then it runs a Lambda function. This Lambda function does nothing more than increase your level. It's just XP. And once you cross certain thresholds, it levels up your player. And it saves that person information to DynamoDB. So that Lambda function is actually calling Dynamo to save player data whenever they level, and it saves their experience. Last thing that it does is it checks, hey, did you level up? Were you level 2? Are you level 3 now? That comes out of the Lambda function. If yes, then it's going to call Momento topics to publish a message to say, hey, this person leveled up. So, there's a lot of talking. It's really not that many steps. It takes longer to explain it than it actually did to build it, funnily enough. So let's kind of dig in. Let's see. So this is what you don't see, right? When you click on something, this is happening when you actually go and click on a squirrel. But let's focus on what you do see. So what you do see, kind of how I designed this workflow is direct integrations, and I already talked about this. This means that we're not building a Lambda function to do everything. This is calling HTTP APIs directly, and it's also communicating directly with different AWS services like EventBridge and DynamoDB. You see a lot of events. This is about event-driven architectures after all, so that's what we're here to focus on. You see events here, and here, and here. So there's only a total of like 15 steps across the entire workflow, and 3 of them are events. But let's take a look closer and look again at what you don't see that's actually happening behind the scenes in an advanced event-driven architecture landscape. So when we go and we save player data to DynamoDB, that's this Lambda function right here. We add XP to the player record and we save it to DynamoDB. What's happening is an event goes out, a DynamoDB stream is triggered, and I have created an EventBridge pipe that takes data directly from the stream and goes straight to an API destination. No code, no Lambda function. We're going stream to HTTP API. And an extremely cool connectivity event-driven architecture. This is the part that I think is the coolest part of the entire thing, and we'll look at the code of what that actually looks like in a little bit. But what's happening here, I save data about the user data changed, and then automatically, without code, with configuration, it's going and it's saving that data into Momento cache. So it has my Momento API key stored in Secrets Manager for free, which is actually a really cool thing about API destinations. And it goes and it calls the Momento HTTP API to say, here is the information about that user. You can cache the player IP address, the XP, and their current level. So when they click on a scroll the next time, you don't have to go fetch it out of DynamoDB. You can pull it straight out of the cache. So that's happening asynchronously. I didn't have to build that into my workflow. That is a choreographed part of the entirety of the workflow. I'm going to pause for 1 second. I saw that I had a question come up from Zied. It says, is this an express workflow? Yes. Yes, it is. Express workflows are really nice because compared to standard workflows, because they have a significantly higher throughput and acceleration rate. I don't know what the actual term is, but whenever it can handle significantly higher bursts than Lambda can. It scales faster. So if all of us and all of our relatives all decided to play this game all at the same time, we wouldn't have an issue, because step function asynchronous execution can keep up. In fact, it scales so quickly, if we were to get throttled, it would actually be API gateway that throttles before step function express workflows. Okay. Yeah, so somebody said that this workflow is not fully visible. I know, and I'm trying to make it bigger, and I don't think I can. I wish I could. Let me see what I can do. Let's get out of this mode. And let's zoom in here, see if that helps. And I'll talk to it just a little bit. Hold on. Okay. That looks like it's a little bit more legible. So this is what we just finished talking about. This was Lambda saves user data into DynamoDB. DynamoDB streams triggers automatically off of that asynchronously. It's an event. And then that stream connects directly to an event bridge pipe, which connects to an API destination that calls Momento. Now, on the other side of this workflow, whenever we are publishing via event bridge, so, I'm pretty sure most of us at this point are familiar with event bridge. It's AWS's event bus. And what this is doing is I have a rule configured on my default event bus that says, hey, whenever somebody publishes this location event, go ahead and pick that up. There's a rule in here that says, look at that, grab this type of event, and then connect directly to Momento again, which is also really cool. It's doing effectively the same thing as that pipe was doing, where it's connecting directly to the Momento HTTP API to publish a message down to the browser. Except this is being triggered from a rule rather than from a pipe. So there's two different ways to trigger an API destination in AWS, the pipe. And so this workflow is actually doing both. Let's go back into the slideshow, see if we have a nicer zoom. This looks okay. Okay, so a little bit about API destinations, because I think this is an extremely cool feature. It also makes EventBridge one of my favorite services in AWS because it makes the extensibility absolutely ridiculously easy. You can connect to basically any third-party API from an API destination. So you can use API keys, you can use OAuth. It will negotiate, EventBridge will negotiate the authentication for you and store the credentials inside of Secrets Manager. Like I said again before, for free. It actually hides it. You don't see your secret in Secrets Manager, but it is doing that behind the scenes for you. And one nice thing about API destinations inside of EventBridge, it creates a connection object in EventBridge, which defines the rules. This is where auth live. This is what the base URL is. You can actually use that in step functions, that same connection object, in order to call an HTTP API directly. So pretty neat, very extensible, and makes communicating with third-party APIs like Momento dirt simple in your workflows. Okay, so we're back to this view. I already said this before, but I need to emphasize this again. There's not really any code written in this entire workflow outside of that one Lambda function where it's doing math. When I wrote this initially, it was before JSONATA came out, JSONATA support inside of step functions, which can do math. This was just the basic JSON math. So all this Lambda function is doing math to say what's the old XP, what's the old XP of the user, what's the new XP of the user, and is that a power of 2, something like that. And then it saves that to the database. But once you connect it to the database, once you save the player data, there's no code to get that to go into Momento cache, and there's no code to notify the browser of the squirrel moving or the player change or the player level changing, which is actually really, really cool. So I do have an asterisk in here. It depends on what you define as code, if this is really no code. Some people say if it's configuration, it's not code. This is something that's actually defined in your infrastructure as code rather than inside of your application or your business logic. Well, again, we'll take a look at that here in a few minutes, and you guys can tell me, do you think this is coding or do you think it's not? So let's go look at it. I'm actually really excited to get your opinion. So please, as we're going through this code, feel free to interrupt me and ask questions. That's actually, I think, the best way to learn is when we answer things on the fly, because I might be skipping over something that might be obvious to me. It's not obvious to you. So let's please ask your questions as we're going through this. So this is Visual Studio Code. This is the entirety of that little squirrel game right here on the left-hand side. I have a level up user. This is what I was saying is just basically doing math. So it's saying, what's your current level? Figuring out what the XP is to cross to the next level, and did you get there? And then it goes and it updates the player in DynamoDB. That's it. Nice and simple. We've seen that 100 times. That's a very common workflow. This Lambda function is what's actually serving the HTML. So this is where it's generating the HTML for that game that we were talking about and serving that down to a browser. So I don't have a Next.js app. I don't have a Vite app. It's just basically vanilla JavaScript and HTML. So what this is doing when this Lambda function is called, like we saw on the diagram, it's loading that user by IP address out of DynamoDB. That's all load user is doing, is it's just a get item. And then it's creating an auth token inside of Momento. So it's actually using the Momento auth SDK to say, hey, this person can read and write in the cache. It can subscribe to the location topic, and it can also subscribe for updates to that specific user. So we're giving a very fine-grained access to that person in here with this, with this auth token. And so what it does with that auth token, you can see here that it generates Momento token, and we call get game HTML. This is literally just doing string interpolation on HTML. There are easier ways to do this, but for the sake of a demo and explaining everything that's happening, this is generally the easiest way. So it has all the HTML. I am adding things in here from the user data that we loaded out of DynamoDB. So what's their user ID, what's their name, what's their level. This is the auth token for Momento. So we're passing this in to the JavaScript that's running outside of that web page. And down here is where it is going and actually subscribing to, here we go, to Momento. So it's using the auth token that we generated, and it said, please subscribe to the location topic and respond by moving the squirrel whenever it says move the location. So pretty neat way to actually serve. Another way to get a session token. A session token is an auth token that has generally scoped credentials to only what that user is allowed to see or do that expires after a certain amount of time. That's why in any other application that you've ever used, you have to log in every day, right? That's a session token. It's something that's only valid for a short amount of time. That way, if it gets intercepted or a bad actor gets it, they can't impersonate you in perpetuity. So anyway, so that's what we're doing there. And then we're also polling or subscribing for user updates. Now, because we're just using plain JavaScript, we are actually doing long polling instead of using the Momento SDK. Now, what's long polling? Usually we hear that phrase when we talk about SQS, Lambda pulling items off of SQS. What is long polling? Long polling is actually where this web page will make a request to Momento to say, do you have any updates on this topic any messages to that topic. And the server will actually hold on to that request until that answer is yes. So until somebody publishes a message to that topic, Momento is going to hold on to that request. So there we go. I think my internet blipped for a second. Long polling says, do you have something? Wait. Yes, here, you may continue. So that's what we're doing. And that's it. So not a whole lot inside of that. Really where the majority of everything is inside of the workflow. We've already gone through this at length, so we don't need to go through the workflow again, but it does look the same. I'm not smoke and mirroring you with my presentation. Oh no, I'm not actually used to the workflow designer in VS Code yet. Be curious if you guys like it. Anyway, so we're there. Those of you that know me know that I'm a big fan of SAM, and I'm not the best, or I'm not the biggest advocate for the CDK. And we're not going to go into it because that's a whole can of worms that I'm not ready to go into on a Friday afternoon. So we're just going to say, let's look at the SAM template. Now, SAM is essentially a wrapper around CloudFormation. It has a bunch of very easy ways to build serverless resources, basically macros that build serverless resources for you and handle a lot of permissions to connect pieces together. This is the part that I want you guys to decide for me. Are we coding or are we configuring? So we saw that the DynamoDB stream connects from DynamoDB directly to an EventBridge pipe that goes to Momento. So we're not writing any code to save automatically data that goes into DynamoDB into the cache. So let's look up our stream. Okay, so we have the role. We don't need to look at IAM. So here's the pipe. So if you guys aren't familiar with pipes, again, this is something that released in, I believe it was 2023 at reInvent. This is an EventBridge feature that connects services together inside of AWS. So what we're doing here is we're saying from a DynamoDB stream, give me the latest thing that's on there. And we're going to filter because we only want insert and modify records. So if we delete something, we're not going to handle that. Pipe's not going to do anything. What we're doing is we're saying, hey, whenever we get data out of DynamoDB that's an insert or a modify, go ahead and put that into Momento cache. And then it is translating the data from DynamoDB into the format that ultimately is going to land inside of Momento, inside of that cache item. So we're saying save in the cache a JSON object with an ID of DynamoDB PK, the experience level or the amount of experience inside of the DynamoDB record experience field, and so on and so forth, level and username. So we're saving that data into the cache, and inside of the path parameter, we're saying use the cache name and store it for an hour. And that's it. And that's really all that we have to do to get data to go automatically from DynamoDB into Momento. And the reason that's a really big deal is because both our front end and our back end resources can access the Momento cache. So that means automatically when data is persisted into DynamoDB, we can access it from anywhere. We can access it from the user interface where people are actively playing games, and then we can also access it from that workflow that's going and incrementing XP. So anybody that's watching, is that coding or is it configuring? Because I think it's not code. I think it's just a translation. I think if anything, we could probably call it ETL. But is ETL coding? Semantics. And that's, essentially it. Now, what I want to say, and let me bring back let me bring back the demo. Now that we know what it looks like, let's look at it again. What I want to leave you with, this one is a short one today. We're not going to go for the full hour. An advanced workflow, or something that is, non-trivial. It does not have to be complex. There's elegance to simplicity, and you really need to understand these core concepts of event-driven architectures to build these really strong, robust mechanisms that automatically retry, that handle, multiple requests that might come in at the same time. So it's a simple demo. It does a lot. It's a complicated workflow. It's an advanced workflow, but hopefully you guys think it's not really that hard. It's not that complex. So let's go to the very end of this presentation, because I'm gonna wrap it up, and then we can do some questions if you want to do some questions. Things we learned today. Complex doesn't equal complicated. We saw that Momento resources can be accessed both from the back end and the front end. Very important. We saw that EventBridge API destinations are actually really cool, and you can connect them to DynamoDB without writing code. What we looked at, this whole thing really was a combination of both choreography and orchestration. And we need to talk about that, because I forgot to actually explicitly talk about choreography and orchestration when we're talking about event-driven architectures. So choreography is a pattern inside of event-driven architectures that listens to events. The publisher doesn't necessarily know who the subscribers are, but the subscribers know when this event goes through, I have to go do something. It's kind of a song and a dance to get all the different players in the field to work through this workflow. Essentially, it is an unnamed pattern, unnamed workflow of things from start to finish, where everybody knows when this happens, it's my turn. Orchestration, in contrast, is something that is more or less dictated for start to finish. So that step function workflow that we looked at, that's orchestration, because we can look at everything that happens from start to finish. This step, and then this step, and then these two steps, and this one over here. Let's do some branching logic. If this happens, then that needs to happen. It's an orchestrated thing from start to beginning. It's very explicit. Choreography is implicit. Those are the words I was looking for. And then the last thing in here, server-side rendering is, it's actually pretty neat. If you haven't used it inside of Lambda before, I highly recommend at least trying. It's one of the ways that you can build micro front ends incredibly easily and safely, because you can handle all of your linear data lookups on the server side and then return HTML back down to a browser. And it just works, which is also really neat, as long as you return the right content type. But, okay. Thank you, guys. I feel like this was a whole whirlwind. I had a lot of fun. I enjoyed talking about this stuff. It's really cool. I get really passionate, and when I get passionate and excited, I talk really fast. So happy to answer any questions, to go back through anything that we just looked at. I do also want to advertise, if you're interested about learning about Momento, hopefully a lot of the people here have gotten their feet wet with it, because, if you're working in the hackathon, that was one of the requirements. I'm always free to talk about it. You can always throw your questions my way. You can message me on the Believe in Serverless Discord. You can find me on LinkedIn. I don't really do Twitter anymore. You can try, and sometimes I check it, but more reliable on LinkedIn or Discord. And then another thing that I want to advertise while I'm here, Paul, could you bring up my slides real quick? Andres and I think he's in the audience, we do a bi-weekly show on everything related to AI. We try to keep up to date with the bleeding edge. So typically what we show you one week, the world changes by the next episode that we do. So the past several weeks, we have worked on local MCP servers. We worked with remote MCP servers. We connected MCP servers to AI agents. And then next week, we still need to do the promo for it, but next week we're going to be working with A2A, which is an agent-to-agent protocol from Google that helps facilitate multi-agent collaboration. So we're trying to stay up to date, and we're actually building real code with it. So we're not just talking about it and getting excited with pipe. This is builders building stuff. So anyway, if anybody has any questions, happy to answer them about anything really. Event-driven architecture, serverless, AI. Let's hear it. And if not, happy Friday. Thank you. I think a lot of you, it's late on Friday night, so I appreciate you spending your time with me. Emrah, you are on mute, good sir.
Okay, so yeah. So I was just like mimicking the so yeah, thanks out. This was a great run through with Momento cache and topics, and I also caught up with your presentation. Thanks out for running it, and Momento keeps pushing it. Yeah, so let's wait for any other question. Like I know that people can find you always on LinkedIn. I don't know, you are not on Twitter much anymore, but like on Blue Sky, I guess.
Yeah, I was really excited when Blue Sky came out and everybody was migrating to that. And then Blue Sky turned into what all the other ones that challenged Twitter did, and it just kind of fizzled out. And I just never went back to Twitter.
And I'm just insisting on calling it Twitter versus X. So yeah.
Yeah. Me too. Same.
Yeah. I guess there's no question. So thanks again. Then let's wrap it up for today. And thanks everyone joining us. And we will see you in the closing webinar in a couple of weeks.
Thank you everybody.